I mean, how did she end up at Thomas and Hunt?
I think we're live.
Excuse me. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the Municipal Planning Commission meeting for March 5th, 2026. Again, I'll call the meeting to order. Tonight, Mark will lead us in prayer and Charles with the pledge, so if you'll please all stand.
Would bow with me, please. Father in heaven, we come to you this evening, Lord, and we just thank you for the blessings that you give us each and every day. All those that we take for granted, Father, they are there, and we need to be happy about the way you inject yourself in our lives. And sometimes we don't even see it. Father, we tonight, as we deliberate the town's business, we ask for discernment, we ask for respect, and we ask for this time to be a time that we can deliberate with good conscience and make good decisions for the town. Father, we also want to say our prayers for those who protect our town and those who do all the work in our city, all of our employees and those first responders and the people that keep us safe. Lord, the biggest thing we want to ask you for tonight is peace. Peace in our country and peace globally. And Father, peace in our community here as well. Go with us now, lead, guide, and direct us. Thank you for your Son. We pray these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Please face the flag.
I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. First up on the agenda tonight is a public hearing, plan of services for Smyrna River of Life Assembly of God, 8200 Safari Drive.
Yeah, this is it's a annexation request. It's on your agenda tonight, and so you all are required to hold a public hearing on the plan of services. As a part of that deliberation for the annexation, this puts in writing the services that would be provided by the town if the property is annexed. In this case, it would be all services, as this does slide within our water service area. This is for the parcel at the end of Safari Drive. It's about 54.5 acres of land that has been requested to be annexed into the town limits. So I believe that's all that I got.
Okay. And with that, I'll open the public hearing for anyone that would like to come forward to provide comments for this plan of services. If you would, when you come up, please give us your name, address, and whether or not you live within the town of Smyrna. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and Catherine will be our timekeeper on that. So is there anyone here that would like to speak on this agenda item? Yes.
Are we specifically on the Safari Drive subject?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's okay. All right. Anyone else? All right. With that, I will close the public hearing, and I will call the Planning Commission back in session. Okay. We are now on to our next item, which is citizens' comments. And I know that we've got a couple of items here tonight that folks are interested in and have some questions about or comments. So before we begin, I think it'd be good to kind of define our role as a commission. You know, by law, any landowner can come forward and submit an application to us to request the change of zoning to their property. And our responsibility is not to invite people to come forward, but to listen to what they bring forward with us and to carefully deliberate and review the plans and review the comments. And then we make a recommendation to the council as a planning commission board. When we do that, and as we deliberate this, we take into account our regulations, our ordinances, and our land use standards. So we do this in a very respectful way, in a deliberate way. So as you come forward tonight, if you'd like to speak and you are on the citizens' comments agenda, we ask you do so in a respectful manner as well. And if you're in the audience, we just ask that you recognize the decorum here. And if you could just refrain from applause or cheering or any vocal interjections, it'd be really appreciated on our part. That said, we do invite citizens' comments. And to speak before the Planning Commission, you must sign up at least 24 hours in advance of our meeting, and that's pursuant to our town council's and town public's comment policy. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Catherine will time your comments, and if you're unable to complete your comments and you think there's something further we should hear, you can submit those in writing and we'll go back and review those. So, as you come forward, and I'll call your name, if you would, just state your name, address, and whether or not you live within the town limits. Okay. Looks like first up I have Kelly Bond. Kelly, are you here? Okay, please come up. And again, if you could give us your name, address, and whether or not you live within the town limits.
Yes, sir. My name is Kelly Bond. I live at 212 Pembroke Lane. I do live within the town limits.
Okay?
Okay. Good evening. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Kelly Bond of 212 Pembroke Lane. I've been a resident of Smyrna Town since 1995, a proud alumni of Smyrna High School. This is my home. My home, along with homes on both the north and south sides of this property, directly adjoin this land. This area is currently wooded and has functioned for years as a natural buffer between residential properties and Gillsville Shopping Center. I'm particularly concerned about 2 issues: compatibility and stormwater impact. First, compatibility. The proposal would place light industrial uses immediately adjacent to established residential homes. Regardless of whether it's labeled light industrial, it still allows warehouse-style buildings, contractor operations, and distribution activities during all hours. The construction and blasting have high chances of damaging our concrete slab properties, decreasing our property value, as well as the possibility of emissions and smells. A 50-foot proposed buffer, roughly 3.3 car lengths, would not even come close to being efficient enough to shield this unsightly structure. The substantial shift from the current wooded residential character of this area. Second, and more importantly, drainage. There is an existing drainage ditch directly behind my property. That means my property is part of the stormwater path for this land. The drainage system can barely handle the current demands, as rainwater has already created a 16-foot long by 8-foot deep sinkhole the city had to come fill August 2025. It was so large it took a weak and large machinery to mitigate. Under heavy rainfall, our 10-foot deep drain ditch fills to the top and engulfs my chain link fence as is. The wooded acreage currently absorbs rainfall naturally. Clearing trees and adding large impervious surfaces, such as roofs and asphalt, will significantly change runoff patterns and increase peak discharge into the existing drainage system. Even though retention is proposed, retention systems are designed to meet minimum standards. They do not account for increasingly intense storm events. Rezoning this wooded residential adjacent land to industrial would permanently change the character of our neighborhood and introduce real drainage risk to existing homeowners. This property does not meet the transition intent of the Airport Innovation Character Area, particularly as it relates to residential adjacency. The 400 petition signatures within 4 days, and I respectfully ask the Commission to deny this rezoning request to consider another option. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Next up, I have Katrina Roberts.
Hi, my name is Katrina Roberts. I live at 215 Pembroke Lane, and I do reside in Smyrna.
Okay.
This property connects right next to my property. A huge part of it, from the whole side to the back. I was told by the city that I could not put a garage there on that side of the house or a driveway. The reason was something to do with the drainage. The water drainage is what they told me. Now, my concern is, why are they able to build if I couldn't build anything there? Because it's the exact same area where they're wanting to build. There's a old fence line right there with trees. And that's, my property's on one side, their property's on the other side. It goes all the way down the back. Right now, over there, it's a bird sanctuary. I feed the birds. I've even seen eagles over there. So that'll all go away. My most concern is the traffic, the noise, and the lights that will take place, especially after 10 o'clock at night. That should cause some health concerns. How are we going to be able to sleep? And what about our children's safety? Children play in that neighborhood. I've seen them over there on four-wheelers, on scooters. This would turn our quiet little community into a very busy, noisy place that we do not want. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, Larry Montgomery.
Thank you all. My name is Larry Montgomery. I live at 211 Pembroke Lane. I am a resident in the town of Smyrna. I have several concerns. I'll try to bullet them and then maybe come back and put some more context to them. First, I would like to ditto everything that's been said so far. We do live in a nice, quiet neighborhood. I've lived there for almost 40 years. I was the third resident to ever live in that neighborhood. I've lived here in Smyrna since 1986. My concern is primarily about noise and flooding concerns. We have inadequate drainage throughout that neighborhood now, as has already been expressed, because of drainage ditches on both sides of Pembroke Lane. Also the noise, as has been expressed as well. I'm also concerned that when we do experience the flooding, which we will have due to this industrial platform being put in, as soon as all that land is paved, that water's got to be dispersed somewhere. That land will not be able to hold all of that water, and it's going to come into Bent Tree subdivision. Those drainage ditches will not be able to maintain that much drainage water. There is no way. They can't do it now during heavy rains. If you need an example to cite, go over to Couchville Pike and look at what's happened over there. As soon as they started building all of that infrastructure, industrial buildings over there, all of the residents in that area, whenever there's a heavy rain, their homes flood. I'm also concerned I may have to get flood insurance, which I haven't had to be concerned with for 40 years living here in Smyrna. I should not have to be concerned about it. I'm also concerned, even though it says that there's no intention to put a connecting road into my subdivision, I know somewhere down the road that will happen. We can look back at history and see that eventually that will happen. Then we're concerned with safety for our children trying to play in a dead-end neighborhood, both in Knox Court and Pembroke Lane. In addition, I am concerned about the wildlife that's natural there. We're already in the deer that's going to be forced out of that area, the birds, the deer, the groundhogs, all the other wildlife that's in that area. I do respectfully ask that this council deny this request. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. I have Deborah Willis.
Hey, everybody. My name's Debbie Willis. I live at 208 Pembroke Lane. I have lived there since 1986. I was one of the first ones on the street. My husband got a job at the Nashville airport, and we came and looked at the city. When we found Smyrna, it was like, oh, that's where we want to live, not up in Nashville. So we moved here. Then we found Bent Tree, and it was a lovely, wonderful community there that we have, and we still have. Our own Steve Sullivan grew up on Pembroke Lane, and I won't tell him any of the bad stuff you used to do.
You're going to get an extra 3 minutes.
Okay. Okay. And if you pay me, that's even better. But it's been a wonderful neighborhood, wonderful neighbors. It sits far enough off of Nissan where it's quiet there. I agree with everything that they've said. The traffic, as of now, in the mornings and when you come home from work, it is backed up from past Bent Tree Drive up to Jefferson Pike every day. So the traffic, the wildlife that they've mentioned, The sinkholes in the water, our ditches have, crumbled and whatever because of the water and the overflow. But mainly I worry about the sinkhole because it was a huge one. And it was right there, sort of in the corner, which was both properties, theirs and ours. So, we're not really so much against something being built there, but it's like, we don't want something that's industrial, that they're add to more traffic and the trucks, more noise. We don't know if they'll be open 24/7, anything like that. But a church, a small businesses, whatever, would be fine. We just want to maintain our wonderful little subdivision that we have, the way it is. And we realize Smyrna has grown. We can tell by the traffic, all that. But we just want to maintain our neighborhood and not have this big loud thing right next to us. So we ask you, like everyone else, to please not vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Tyler Patterson.
Good evening. My name is Tyler Patterson. I live at 409 Asa Court in Smyrna. I'm a lifelong member of this community and a proud graduate of Swords Creek, class of 17. I'm here tonight to respectfully voice my opposition to the Thomas and Hutton development. I drive through the Nissan Drive and Jefferson Pike intersection nearly every day. I don't need a new traffic study to tell me what I see with my own eyes. Traffic regularly backs up, drivers grow impatient, and serious accidents are becoming far too common. Just recently, on February 2nd, we experienced a fatal crash at this very intersection. For hours, Nissan Drive was shut down from Sam Davis Road all the way to Jefferson Pike. Families were delayed, businesses were disrupted, and most importantly, a life was lost. That tragedy underscores what many of us already know. This corridor is under strain. Reporting by WKRN on July 9th of last year highlighted other safety concerns in the same area, noting that the Smyrna Police Department recorded more than 70 crashes there between 2015 and 2019, and that data predates the explosive growth we've seen since 2020. Our population has increased significantly since our last census, nearly 19% by some projections. More residents mean more cars. More cars mean more congestion, and more congestion unfortunately means more opportunity for accidents. Adding an industrial development that would bring increased truck traffic to an already overburdened intersection will not ease these concerns. It will only intensify them. Larger vehicles require longer stopping distances, wider turning radiuses, and they reduce visibility. Introducing that dynamic into an intersection that is already struggling raises serious safety questions. From that same news report, our own Jenny Williams, who's the president of the Gillsville Family Center, described Jefferson Pike perfectly. We have a country road with city traffic. Even with the most recent completion of improvements to Jefferson Pike, the character and capacity of this corridor remain limited. Infrastructure upgrades alone do not eliminate congestion, especially when growth continues to outpace planning. I'm not opposed to growth. Growth is inevitable. But responsible growth requires us to prioritize safety, infrastructure capacity, and the well-being of the residents who already call this place home. I respectfully urge you to consider whether this development at this location at this time is truly in the best interest of Smyrna and its residents. Thank you for your time and your service to our community.
Thank you. Next, we have Kelly Wilson.
Hi, I'm Kelly Wilson. I live at 205 Knox Court, and I'm a Smyrna resident.
Okay.
I just have big concerns about the fact that we have some drainage issues in our neighborhood already with lots of flooding, a previous sinkhole this summer. I think we need to further consider those conditions and problems in our community before we add to it. And the traffic patterns, I drive Jefferson Pike every day on my way to work, and it is very concerning, and adding more big rigs to that is not going to help us. That's it.
All right, thank you. Next, Tim Keenan. Is Tim here?
see any movement outside.
No. No.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to Shelby Sally.
Hi, I'm Shelby Sully. I live at 203 Ellis Street in Smyrna. I want to start by saying I respect the opinions of everyone here, and I applaud you for voicing your opinions. But I'm also here today in support of Thomas and Hutton and the KBC Advisors rezoning request for the property on Jefferson Pike. This land holds deep personal significance for my family as it was purchased by my grandparents Gilbert and Mavis Olered more than 60 years ago. A portion of that land was developed into what is now known as Gillsville, and the remaining property has been vacant all these years. After the passing of my Nana, the Gillsville businesses and properties were inherited by my father Gilbert Olered and his sisters Jenny Williams and Candy Olered. As this town has grown and shifted, so has my family's lives and businesses. The Gillsville Shopping Center was built in the early 1970s with the IGA supermarket at its anchor. When Nissan arrived in 1983, Smyrna transformed from a small town into a major manufacturing hub. That growth created the need for more housing, including the Bent Tree neighborhood. And with that brought new competition that ultimately closed the store that my grandparents ran. Nevertheless, they adapted, shifting their focus to Gill's Ace Hardware in 1990. Until the hardware store was closed a few years ago and sold to a new owner, the Olered family operated retail businesses in Smyrna for 70 years, providing jobs and contributing tax revenue. I share this not to ask for special consideration, but to just offer context for the situation and the land being discussed. While some Bent Tree residents have enjoyed the field behind their homes, my family has maintained this property and paid taxes on it for decades. It has remained in the same family ownership long before the neighborhood existed. I've also seen a lot of misinformation online regarding this project, including the number of acres proposed for development. Some of what has been shared online is simply not accurate. I truly empathize with the Bent Tree homeowners, as change to one's surroundings can be difficult. But as a homeowner myself, I believe most residents understood that that land could be developed at some time when they assumed the risk of buying their homes. In addition, concerns about the traffic and infrastructure are understandable, but with the widening of Jefferson Pike, the timing for responsible development is more favorable than ever. In conclusion, to put the length of ownership into perspective, my grandparents purchased this land when my dad was just a little boy, and he will be 70 on his next birthday. Over time, things must change, and that is a big part of a thriving, evolving town. With this development, it has the potential to bring jobs, increase tax revenue to our growing community. Regardless of tonight's outcome, development on this property is inevitable and will happen eventually. My hope is that it happens in a way that benefits both longtime residents and future generations. And I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next, I have Hubert Comer.
My name is Hubert Comer. I live at 569 High Point Drive, and I am a citizen of Smyrna. All of the points that I originally thought about bringing to your attention have already been touched on, so I will not go over them again. So that leaves me with a letter that was received in our neighborhood by KBC Advisors. And before I say that, I do want you to know that I feel that people have the right to sell their property, just as people have the right to buy property. So that is not the issue here. But in this letter from KBC Advisors, there were a couple of points that I would like to direct to you. And one being in the second paragraph, our goal is to create a quality business park that serves the local needs and fits the character of the area. Now, it's been my understanding that this enterprise will consist of tractor trailers entering and exiting at all times of perhaps day and night. Those points have already been made, but I do not see how tractor trailers and a trailer park of that nature, tractor trailer park, interfaces well with the citizens of Bent Tree subdivision. Totally at opposition to each other. At the placement of this facility, it will not be an inviting entrance to our subdivision. I would not want to be reminded every day as I pull into that subdivision what is sitting on my front porch. Finally, the third paragraph says, "We intend for the park to be accretive to Smyrna and the overall community." Now, for those of us who don't use that word accretive every day, the definition is characterized by gradual growth or increase, which means more of the same. So it sounds like this is saying this is just the beginning. And with that being the case, I really do hope that you will give careful consideration to your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Comer. Last on our citizens' comments, I have Barbara Afams, 1404 Old Nashville Highway, Smyrna, Tennessee. Are you here, Barbara? See anybody in the
I don't
lobby?
see anyone out there, no.
Okay.
If I could, I know it's a little out of the norm, but in this case, I happen to have obviously a personal connection to a lot of the folks that are speaking here tonight. I just want to point a couple of things. Several of you mentioned, and again, most of you I consider family. I did grow up on 204 Pembroke Lane. Larry, you were the third house. I was the sixth house. Debbie, you were the ninth house. I know the community, I know the neighborhood, and I know the people, and I understand everything you're saying. But I do want to point out a couple of points that several of you made, and I just want to make sure you realize the reality. Pembroke was stubbed in 1985. It was not made a cul-de-sac for a reason, because that property behind it is owned by someone, and it will develop someday. Now, the question is, what does that look like? R3, which matches what's in Pembroke or in Bent Tree, seems like the logical option. But I don't want anyone to assume that that wooded area that I played war in, that I shot BB guns in, and that I chased animals in is going to stay there forever. It's not. Because it is privately owned, and the family, the Oleroods, are also very good friends of mine, and they have a right to sell it. And at some point, they're going to want to do that, and it's the right time. If it's the product or another product, it's going to come. So I just don't want anyone to think that's kind of a joke that we say, and it sounds a little crass, but if you want to control the land beside you, you need to own it. So if you guys can buy it, you can leave it woods, but otherwise, it's going to develop. It's just a matter of when. And so I just want to make sure you recognize that and realize that that's why that street was left the way it was, is so that it could connect out someday, not a cul-de-sac. Honestly, with the knowledge I have now, and probably all of you, maybe we would have asked the Gaines brothers to make that a cul-de-sac a long time ago, right? And if they'd have done that, we probably wouldn't be having some of these conversations. Debbie saying she did.
No, the Gaines brothers told all of
Okay.
us
Yeah,
that that would never be cut through.
I got you.
Because TVA owned all of
Yeah.
it. So he obviously lied to us.
So I appreciate everything that all of you are saying, and I understand, and I would feel the exact same way. I think the Oleroods, Jenny and Candy and Gilbert have the right to sell the property and to do what they need to it as well, and that's got to be a consideration. So I just want everybody to kind of look at it from both perspectives and understand that it's not going to stay undeveloped. It's just a matter of when. So somebody said it's the beginning. Hopefully, it's not the beginning of product that may or may not fit the community, but it's going to develop.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we can't take additional comments at this time. No, I'm not you. I saw somebody behind you with a hand. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, we're going to close citizen comments with that. And we're going to move on to our next item, which is approval or correction to the minutes of the February 5th, 2026 regular meeting. Counselor, are the meeting minutes in order?
They are.
Any questions or comments from the commission concerning your review of last month's meetings?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
I have a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Ken. Further discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes and this motion for the February 5th, 2026 regular meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion is approved. We are now on to old business. Our first item is Bailey Equipment and Interlogistics, Trident Drive, owner, developer, Caravan Ventures, LLC.
Yeah, this is a project you all have looked at for a couple months, and it was deferred from the February meeting to tonight. This is a site plan for development on Trident Drive. It is an industrially zoned property, and so that it's a vacant tract, and they brought this plan forward. There have been a few changes since you all looked at this last month, so I'll go through and kind of highlight those. So not everything's changed, but some things have changed. This is a 48,250 square foot warehouse and an office building. 45,000 square feet is the warehouse space. 3,250 is the office use in the front. The property was rezoned from C2 to I1 in March of last year to permit for this building and this occupancy. A single access point will be provided off of Tridon Drive. Vehicle use area is about 1.25 acres, which would require 4,350 square feet of landscaping. They're proposing 16,850. There's 30 parking spaces required. They've got 37 shown, and they're meeting the handicap parking requirement as well. One of the big discussion points last month on this was the architectural elevations. Those haven't changed, really, but as an alternative to that was discussion regarding the landscape buffers around this building. And so those have changed. And so I think, yeah, this slide kind of shows a little bit of that. Basically, the landscape plan now shows a minimum of 20 feet tall when planted magnolia trees along I-24. Holly trees are shown lining the north and south property lines at a minimum of 9 feet tall when planted. And so that would be either side of the building and the rear of the building, which would be where it would be visible, potentially visible at least, or certainly visible from I-24 and potentially from as well as Lee Victory Parkway. The holly trees, there are some willow oaks as you get toward the front of the property, which are 10 to 12 feet in height. Streetscaping on Tridon Drive, the species there, we need to look at that. There are some overhead power lines there, so we got to work through that. What they're showing now doesn't meet what we specifically will look at. They're there. There's not the species might need to be changed potentially. Again, we'll have to look at that with the overhead power lines with Middle Tennessee Electric. Again, the architectural elevations are where they were at last month with regards to the percentages and everything on a mix of metal and brick and different things there. So nothing's really changed on that. Again, they have the main change on this is the additional, and this kind of shows those vision as far as if you're looking at the building from those locations, where you would see or not see. The several comments under standard comments, all those would need to remain. Again, as comment 1, the proposed architectural elevations do not meet design review. We'd ask them to either submit revised elevations or provide the plans for screening, and so they have provided those plans for screening. Comment number 2 there would be a gate on this that might limit fire department access, and so it has to have an ANSI approved device, and so that's would remain. We did ask them to show the truck dimensions for the auto turn. They do show an auto turn. It appears to work. They didn't have the dimensions shown on the plan, so the truck that was used, we asked them to add that. Again, they do have the streetscaping is shown now on Tridon Drive. We need to look at the specific species there, but that comment 4 has been addressed, but we need to tweak it a bit. Comment 5 was a informational comment regarding the outdoor storage. There was discussion about some storage, and at one time, that's not what they're proposing now, but that's why that comment's there. And then there was a stormwater comment regarding the outfall connecting to the existing structure. The storm water, we need to look at that comment and see if that's been addressed or not. We had originally recommended, kind of denial or deferral on that just because of the issues, but with the changes that have been made, we would recommend approval if you all are comfortable with the landscaping as it's been proposed. And if you do recommend, or if you do approve as submitted, we would recommend just removing comment 1 and relating to that building comments that would not be included in your approval. I think that's all that I have.
Kevin, concerning,
So this eliminated the sightline issues we had with the screening we discussed last time
Correct,
with the landscaping package.
correct.
And design review's okay now with staff.
Yes, those changes.
I assume if we didn't get a digital packet. I don't have anything in my packet for this, other than just the agenda item. I don't have any of the drawings or anything. So I don't know if it's different, but that's okay. I think, since nothing changed but landscaping, and I think we beat that horse already, so I think
Yeah.
I'm good either way, but I don't have anything in here.
Those are the elevations, yeah.
So that, my only question is that one right there, F and E, which is really
Those were the
behind
two.
the, yeah, what's that?
Those were the two, right?
Yeah, so F and E though, it kind of brings up another question, which is probably not a moot point at this point, but the shooting range that's going in right there, there's no buffering behind it in the interstate. But they meet design review from that interstate view, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah,
they're
I just wanted to
building-
highlight that
Yeah.
this one's requiring buffering because the rear of their building didn't meet the same review that the interstate view would have.
Correct.
Kevin, do you have the landscape drawing you can put up there?
I don't think that's in there. It's in your packet that's in front of you,
Yeah,
but it's not, it's toward the back of that
I
sheet.
just don't look at the council members if they don't have the plans. It shows their quality product as far as.
I think all of you have paper, I'm the only one without it probably, so I think I'm good.
And I like they're starting at a minimum of 7 feet and going up. That's a good sign. Magnolia's starting at 20 feet.
That's correct.
That's a big tree.
They better have a good lawnmower.
Kevin, you said there could be some potential issues with utility lines. Where are we looking at again?
That's along the streetscape, and there's some overhead power there. They're showing they're putting the trees there, but it's more of an understory type tree, which we can work with Middle Tennessee Electric. They have some specific species that they allow. The power line is within the right of way, so we need to look at the distance from that power line and see kind of what they would allow.
And I'm sorry, you meant, we're talking about the front elevation?
That's along the front along Trout Drive.
Does the front elevation already meet design review, or did it not?
Well, we weren't, because it's industrial and the front elevation is really not visible,
Right?
other than from Trout, we didn't have that really
So
concern.
that's okay?
Yeah,
They're
right,
screening that front corner, right?
right. And there is some screening, there's some pretty large willow oaks they're gonna plant as well, near the front of the property.
For the
that
Lee
would-
Victory site.
As far as the Lee Victory
Yeah.
side, yes.
So with that, staff is,
It meets what you all had asked for last month.
and does it meet design review with the screening? It meets our ordinances and regulations?
Right, right.
Okay.
Kevin, the only other comment I'll have is, I would also still ask that you put an item on our next joint meeting to discuss potential ordinance, review on this to allow for screening, because I think currently it doesn't really have language one way or the other.
That's correct. Not specifically to that, right?
Yeah.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve with staff comments except number 1, excluding comment number 1.
A motion to approve with staff comments excluding comment 1. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion is approved. Our next item under site plan, Seven Oaks Business Center, Seven Oaks Boulevard. Owner, developer, Barn Parks, and Sharif Ibrahim.
Yeah, this is a site plan. Again, you all looked at this last month as well and was deferred. There were some concerns at the time regarding, well, it actually was deferred at the applicant's request, but there were some concerns that staff had regarding loading zones and different things. And so this is a revised version of the plans that we feel like meets the requirements now, but I'll go over the report again. Again, it's changed a little bit from what's in your packet. The building is actually 11,165 square feet. This is a commercial one-story building on Seven Oaks Boulevard. Eastern portion would be proposed to be a grocery store with the remaining 4 potential tenants for retail. There's an option for medical as well. It will obviously be allowed per the whatever the C2 district would allow, except because of parking constraints, they really don't have adequate parking or room with this size of building for restaurants. So it would not be allowed to have any restaurants here because they do require higher parking requirements. Square footage of vehicle use area is about 6,200 of an acre, which would require 2,701 square feet of landscape, and they're proposing 11,839. There are 50, with a little bit larger building, 56 spaces are required, and 56 spaces are what they have provided, and they are meeting our handicap parking requirements. There is, the part of this property does border residentially zoned tracts of land, and so they are proposing, and as required, a type C landscape buffer on the northern and western property lines, abutting those residentially zoned properties. Foundation plantings are shown at the base of the building on the south and eastern faces, and additional landscaping shown in landscape islands along the eastern property line, and then there's along the street as well. Architectural elevations show the building to be finished with brick, glass glazing, and some fiber cement board. There are metal doors on the rear of the building. Those are just those access doors, typical pedestrian doors. One's shown on the eastern elevation. All 4 elevations have at least 93% primary material, so that does meet design review. We had several standard comments, all of which would remain. Then under staff comments, again, just to reiterating that no restaurants will be allowed based on the provided parking. There was a couple of drainage pipes that needed, that were labeled, that we asked them to be RPC type pipe. Those pipes have been removed, so they're not, that comment can be removed as well. We'd ask them to clarify some drainage pipes, are they connecting or is it pervious? And if pervious, where's the under drain? The plan, that drainage has been updated. Our stormwater department does still need to review that, and they can review that as part of the grading permit. So we would want to keep comment 3 just for that comment. So, as they've not had the opportunity to review that yet. Comment 4 can be removed. They've updated all the square footage there, and it's all matching now, so that's not a problem. We do have one kind of just a minor comment to look at on to add. With the landscaping near the front, there's the kind of the curve of Seven Oaks Boulevard there, which I don't think just not zoomed out enough to show exactly, but there's kind of Seven Oaks kind of curves to the south and curves back to the north, and it kind of starts to curve again kind of at this location. Is just to make sure, just check the site distance. If you look at the landscaping plan, which is what is required, they're meeting our requirements, but there's an oak tree and different things near that area, and at the entrances, just to be sure and check the site distance with those curves with that, and tweak the locations if we need to there, of that landscaping. And with that additional comment, with what we removed, we would recommend approval.
Okay. Questions from the commission?
I just wanted to thank the developer for flipping the building and taking the density of activity from the market away from the retail, away from the residential, and putting it on the retail side.
Okay. Anything else from the commission? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the staff comments.
Okay, I have a motion to approve with staff comments, including Kevin's addition.
Including Kevin's addition.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion is approved. We are now on to our next agenda item, which is annexation, zoning, and plan of service request, Smyrna River of Life, Assembly of God, 8200 Safari Drive, annexation and I-2 zoning.
Yeah, this is the annexation request, so we had the public hearing on the plan of services earlier tonight. This is a request for annexation of one parcel of land that's 54.5 acres, currently zoned institutional in the county, and has been requested to be rezoned I-2 as part of the annexation into the town. Surrounding zoning is a mix of C2 and I2 in town and RM in Rutherford County. The land use plan is the 24 Gateway character area, which would support a mix of uses and services, both local and regional in scale, such as hospitality, retail, restaurant, and multifamily uses. No streets on the major thoroughfare plan are affected with this development. A large portion of this property does lie within the floodway, 100-year floodplain, or 500-year floodplain. So any development would require submittal of a floodplain development permit application. Majority of that floodplain area there, the proposed development plan would leave completely alone, but they will be affecting it a little bit, again, if it's approved. A traffic study will be required prior to approval of a site plan for the development. Any improvements recommended by that study will be required to be installed by the developer. Number 6, there is an existing 6-inch water line on Safari Drive that serves this property that would need to be upsized to a 12-inch to meet fire flow requirements, which are 2,000 gallons per minute, 20 psi with a sprinkler system. So they're a little bit more substantial fire flow requirements. So they would have to meet those. This property is currently has been used for a few years now as a church. The church was developed and built through the county. The church, essentially they had a tent that they've had up for a few years now, and worshiping in that tent. That tent, they're no longer meeting in there, as our understanding is it is being used for storage. There's also have been 3, I believe, modular buildings placed on the site. It was being utilized as a school. My understanding that is still in use. Our fire department and the rest of staff as well has some concerns with regards to, there's been a lot of back and forth between the church and the county on, there's some fire code concerns with what that's been in place there. And so our fire department doesn't want to inherit that issue, I guess, as the point it comes down to put it bluntly, I guess. No, it's serviced by the town. Yes, and yeah, water and sewer. Anyway, it would be our recommendation that, and how, I don't know the best way to approach this, but we have no, this is consistent with the land use around it. It makes sense from an industrial standpoint. The proposed development plan makes sense. But we would recommend, I guess, that the property not be officially annexed into the town until such time as the existing buildings are vacated and removed. It's our understanding from the buyer, but the plan is that they would vacate relatively, or I believe they said June 1st. So they do want to move forward. They do want to have at least some assurances of approval, I guess, before they buy the property, certainly. But they're okay with if we delay the annexation for a little bit of time to allow that to happen. They're here and can certainly speak to that, but.
So I have a question about that then.
Okay.
How does that work and function? How do we approve or vote on something and delay the annexation? Or are you saying we defer this out? What does that mean?
I think you have to, it's an action item, so I think you have to either defer it or vote on it, one way or the other. I mean, you can add recommendations to the vote, but I think you either defer it or take action on it.
Let me expand on that. I want to make sure I understand. So is there the ability, if this were to be approved, would that be subject to annexation on June 1, and the fact that the buildings would have to be removed at that point, or?
Vacated.
I'm trying to, Steve, is that what you're?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. I was thinking, you know, by the time this goes through planning and council, we're really not talking about an effective date until April or May.
It'd be if it's approved, if it gets approved at April council, it'd be mid-April, or mid-May rather. 'cause
Right,
it's a
so
30 days-
obviously-
It's a 30-day window already.
So did they
required.
give you any idea of how long they wanted to continue to use those buildings before annexation?
It's my understanding from the buyer that they're having, as part of the sale agreement, that they would be vacated by June 1st.
Okay. 'Cause that was where I was going, was if that's the case, then we would make it a part of our motion is approved, but it's subsequent on those buildings being vacated before that final vote, right?
That would be proper, yes.
Yeah, but if you're saying June 1st, then April, we could defer for 60 days and it's not an issue.
Right,
Is that right?
right.
Yes.
Okay. And then the other question I had is, it's about 300,000 square feet of space between the three buildings. Are they not?
335.
Yeah, are they not required to have a second entrance? Safari Drive is the only entrance to this property.
We talked about that quite a bit internally. If they sprinkle the buildings, they don't, and they meet the fire code requirements as they are set up with this. Yeah, because that was our original discussion, was a second entrance. It's difficult to get a second entrance here beyond probably.
They have to come around behind the other church probably and buy some property, right?
There is a drive that serves as a second entrance for Parkway Baptist Church.
Yeah.
And then it would probably have to tie into that. The church owns that drive, that's a private drive.
I don't see that.
So, and it also would involve a bridge over a creek and into that, a lot of that area that's floodplain. So we did discuss that with them and with internally as well. Mr. Lawrence, I know I think he's in the lobby, if you want to speak with him about it, but he and our building official, Christy Worrell, looked at that. As long as these buildings are sprinkled and have the fire flow requirements that we have all that, they would not have to have a second entrance,
Wouldn't they have to be sprinkled anyway due to the size?
most likely.
Yeah, so.
But-
You said if sprinkled, I don't think there's really an option without it, is there?
But there, at some point, a threshold would get reached, even with sprinkled buildings and the amount of square footage, but it would not, this would not hit that threshold.
Is that the water issue you alluded to earlier on?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yeah, they'll have, well, that's just an upgrade. There's an existing 6-inch water line that goes down Safari Drive that serves this property
So they have the
currently.
pressure?
And so they've got to they got to replace that with a 12-inch line.
Okay.
Yeah, to get that fire flow adequate.
And that fire flow includes sprinkling?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so I want to make sure I'm clear on this. The buildings as we're looking at it on this site plan or
Which this is a
plat,
concept plan. This isn't.
I'm sorry, concept.
It's not a PUD, so there's nothing tying them to this plan. This is just what they have proposed as a concept at this
The
point.
buildings as they're presented here would be required to be sprinklered regardless. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, they can get to the 2,000, would have adequate fire flow for them to not be sprinkled. That's such a high number they could never get to it. So yes, they will have the buildings will be sprinkled and still have the 2,000 GPM fire flow as well.
And with that per our regs, then we're okay with the one entrance.
Correct.
Okay.
Hey, Kevin, regardless of whatever gets built here, is this green belt going around, is that the representation of the 100-year flood? That can never get built on, is that right?
Yeah, they're basically leaving, what they're proposing here, but yeah, a big portion of it is floodway and 100-year floodplain as well. They're leaving the vast majority of that alone. There's a little bit, again, with this concept plan, the building that's closest to Lee Victory there is a little bit of area there. There will have to be some cut and fill and some balancing in the floodplain there. They'll have to go through the whole process, show no increase to the flood area, and not affecting any downstream or upstream property owners and that sort of thing.
So because of that, the residential in the backside there is going to have one heck of a good buffer.
Yeah, there's all that existing tree line that's there. There is easement across it. I believe it's a power easement.
Okay.
But that they'll, obviously they'll have to leave that alone, but the majority of that area that's abutting that residential area is, you're gonna be left alone, yeah, because of the floodway and floodplain.
Yeah, it doesn't even look like it's close to encroaching.
Not at all.
Not at all. Okay. Other questions or discussion?
Can you just give us a couple of items? I should know this probably, but I don't. We're talking about annexing 54 acres as I-2. Obviously, there's no commitment that this is what it looks like. They have to come back.
Right.
But what all could be in I-2 by right?
It's pretty much anything you can think of industrial, certainly light manufacturing, not heavy manufacturing, but it could have light manufacturing, you could have warehousing, cross-dock warehousing, any type of level of warehousing. There's a few other things, that's what the majority of what it is these various types of manufacturing or warehousing.
And that's consistent with what we're seeing in this area around here, correct?
Yeah, everything here is industrial, other than the speedway and where the gun range is under construction there, it's commercial. Everything else then you got the Burger King next to the Lee Victory there, but other than that, everything else out there is industrial, yeah.
Okay.
The main reason I asked that is just because of the condition of Safari Drive, and would that road need upgrading if they're talking about semi-traffic in and out?
Yeah.
I would suspect there would be some improvements to Safari Drive that would have to be made.
That's potential, I mean, we would have to have, the traffic study would have to look at that, for
Yep.
sure.
Got it, okay.
As well as the intersection of Tridon and Nissan, there's been a lot of discussion about.
It's roughly 438 parking spaces on those three buildings.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
That's why I noticed the square footage of the spot, so I was
Right
like,
away, yeah.
that's 500 potential cars, 438 cars, and
Yeah.
300,000 square footage. That could be a lot of in and out.
So that would be something for the developer certainly to consider. And we're considering whether it's appropriate to annex, zone it, and provide a plan of service to here.
Correct.
You're done, I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I'll make a motion that we defer this for 60 days to give them time to vacate those buildings and to commit to that. And we'll take it back up at that point. And not 60 days, 2 meetings.
So
So
that would be
defer
the
to the May.
May meeting?
May meeting.
I'll give a second.
A motion and a second to defer until the May 2026 meeting. Any further discussion? All those in favor of this deferral, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion has been approved, and this is deferred to the May 2026 Planning Commission meeting. Okay. We're now on to rezoning requests. The first is Thomas and Hutton on behalf of KBC Advisors, 413 to 417 and 453 Nissan Drive rezoning, R1, C2, and P&O 1 to PID.
Yes, this is a request for rezoning, it's about 28.3 acres that has been requested. It's in a part of one track as well as all of another track. This is a small track along Nissan Drive there. Currently, majority of this property is owned R1. There's a little bit of it is C2 and some of it, the one track, the adjoining or adjacent track there along Nissan is P&O 1. The surrounding zoning is R1, R3, C2, and some additional properties on P&O 1. Land use plan for this area is the Airport Innovation Character Area. Would support a wide range of industrial and office-related uses. This character area, while industrial in nature, is intended to provide for a transition and buffer from more intensive uses to less intensive uses such as residential and commercial. The major thoroughfare plan does designate Nissan Drive and Jefferson Pike as principal arterials. Adequate right-of-way does exist for those streets. This proposed PID, or planned industrial development, is to allow up to 180,000 square feet in 3 separate buildings to be developed following the zoning ordinance requirements of I-1 with regards to building setbacks, maximum lot coverage, and height. However, the uses allowed by right and by special exception have been modified as follows. They did remove airports, air cargo terminals, and heliports, and dairies and truck gardens from the uses permitted, so those would not be there. Did move commercial recreation, contract construction services, consumer repair services, automotive service and repair, general business service, and religious facilities from uses permitted as special exception to uses permitted, so to be allowed by right. And then removed intermediate impact facilities, convenience commercial, and general personal services from uses permitted as a special exception. So those 3 uses, which are allowed by BZA review in I-1, would not be allowed at all. Comment 5 was an informational comment, just what the minimum fire flow would be based on the proposed building size and that sort of thing. A traffic study is required. We did receive that yesterday, so if you have any questions on that, Mr. Rose is here, has looked at it. Obviously, they're here as well, the developers, to look at that. Any improvements recommended by that study must be completed by the developer. Staff is concerned about the introduction of industrial uses and additional industrial traffic to Nissan Drive and Jefferson Pike in this area, with particular concern for the SR 102 and SR 266 intersection. In addition, SR 102 does rise northbound from Bent Tree Drive, which could cause an issue for sight distance at the proposed project access point off of Nissan Drive. Number 7 was an informational comment, just so they're aware there's no trees, shrubs, or vegetation allowed within utility easements. Number 8, the proposed architectural elevations are a mixture of thin brick and metal siding and roll-up doors on Building C, and they're primarily concrete tilt panel with metal loading doors on Buildings A and B. Buildings A and B are the 2 larger buildings that are proposed. Building C is a smaller building closer to Nissan Drive. For the elevations on Building C that would face the residential development to the south and west, staff would recommend that the architectural elevations meet design review, which would limit the use of metal panels. That's really, again, it's not something that they have acknowledged that, but they did not provide any revised drawings or anything like that to meet that. We did ask the question about what is the intended use of Building C. That's the smaller building, 15,000 square feet. They are showing an area for outdoor storage. We asked what would that be? What would be stored? They did show, and my main concern there, because the fire department can't use that, an outdoor storage area can't be used for fire access, because you never know what's there, what's going to be stored there, vehicles or whatever it is. Parked there, whatever. So you can't really count that for access. So they did show a kind of a hammerhead tee in that parking area to be dedicated. It would have to be there. If they have that, it would have to be dedicated as a fire lane, kept open and clear at all times. So that was a concern about that building. And also the 4 parking spaces are all that was shown for that building, which didn't seem adequate for a 15,000 square foot building. All roadways, these are internal, would be required to be at least 26 feet wide, and that was a fire code requirement. Again, some of these are informational. A plat will be required to be recorded to dedicate easements and create property lines. Again, that's an informational comment. Comment 12, they did address, they do now show the sizes of the existing water and sewer mains, so we can remove comment 12. And comments 13 and 14 were from our utilities department, and these are kind of informational, and as they move forward with their plans, if this is approved, to provide access to an existing gas regulator station, to provide access to that, and easements over all utilities. So, obviously, we've had quite a bit of discussion already about this tonight with several people speaking. I've had several emails and phone calls as well in our department, expressing very similar concerns to what we heard tonight regarding traffic, stormwater, sinkholes, noise, all those things. So there's nothing, I don't have anything to do. There was a petition, they did send the petition. So I haven't seen the actual petition because our IT firewall wouldn't allow me to click, when I clicked the link, it wouldn't open up. I did see a PDF of some of the pages and then also the list of people who signed the petition and some of them, the ones who made comments, what those comments were. And they, again, they were very similar to what we heard tonight. So, so there's nothing really additional, I guess, I can add with that regard, with regards to that, but did want to acknowledge that we did receive that petition. So I guess that's all that I have at this time. Developer is here and certainly would like the opportunity to speak as well.
Would
If you'll
the commission
like
like to hear from the developer? Maybe, does anybody have any questions?
Sure. I'd say, yeah.
Yeah,
not a problem.
you come up.
I got a couple for Kevin real quick.
Let's do that.
These are going to be industrial buildings, so what are we talking height-wise? I don't see an elevation drawing that shows me the height of these buildings.
Well, they would be built, the max height would be 50 feet, 'cause that's what's allowed in I-1.
I'll let the developer tell you, but I asked the same question when I talked to him, and he said 30 feet. So 50 is allowed, but they said they were going to be at 30 feet. Is that right? Yeah.
It looks like we got a 20-foot type D buffer. These are basically 83,000 square foot.
Well, let's, all right, tell you what, Ken, let's let the developer come up and.
I agree.
And if you, representative, come up, give us your name and address, and then Ken's gonna have a couple of questions for you right off.
Hi, my name is Huntley Lewis. I represent KBC Advisors together with the landowner. It's 601 Merritt Drive, Nashville, Tennessee. I also have our civil engineer, Thomas and Hutton, here to answer any technical traffic or drainage questions you may have. I am a civil engineer by trade, but can understand you wanting his opinion, not mine, on the matter. Just as a quick intro, you know, we really care about our impact to the residential. You know, some things we've done to demonstrate that, you know, instead of pursuing a straight rezone, we agreed to do a PID so that we could hear the residents' feedback, planning's feedback, and build in some extra things, which I'm going to go over in my presentation to help mitigate for some of the concerns that, you know, we expected from the residents, you know, being right up against, you know, that property line. We think, you know, we've done a pretty good job of that, but, you know, you can be the judge. Our goal is not to bring a huge transportation hub with hundreds of trucks coming in. You know, the size of these buildings are, you know, much more indicative of local, regional, industrial tenants, you know, and so just so you understand that, and I have slides addressing that specifically, but we're not trying to change the character and subject, you know, people to just that level of, you know, intensity from a truck traffic standpoint. And I think we really are addressing that, especially when compared to kind of other uses contemplated within the airport character district. Also, you know, we did approach some of the neighbors in advance, specifically the ones that abutted our property, to try to get some feedback before this meeting. You know, we've seen some things online, and we think we have addressed those already in many respects, but, you know, we understand the feedback and want to consider that. So with that said,
Ken? Go
yes.
ahead with your questions.
Correct me if I'm wrong, when we're talking industrial, isn't the buffer
Type D is the heaviest.
Right, so a 20-foot buffer is going to be acceptable on this?
It is required, typically, it's a type D, is basically the same landscaping as required as a type C, but there's a berm as well. It's on top of a berm. Yeah.
And I think we're going above and beyond
Yeah, they're
there.
proposing more than that, but
Understood. I couldn't remember on which industrial, which the buffer grew to a greater, like we had at
Yeah,
Jefferson.
industrial to residential is our biggest, most heaviest buffer requirement.
But this is the same size buffer as we're doing, you know, PIDs up against other residential. It just seems off. That's all.
real quick question. Did you consider or have they had any conversations to restricting truck traffic to this property, semi-trailer traffic completely?
No, and we haven't considered that. We do address traffic, and I think that we understand the residents' concern about that. That said, for an industrial use, the size of these buildings, in practice, really do not result in the type of truck traffic that I think would really be a burden. But
Okay. Yeah, and the reason I ask that is, besides several citizens mentioned traffic, in general, that's the issue. But my concern is, and I've talked to you about this, the left turns on a Nissan, the left turns on the Jefferson Pike, especially with a 60-foot semi-trailer and truck coming out of there. You turn onto Jefferson Pike, it's a 0-grade curve with a downgrade. So essentially, you're gonna come around the curve, start down a hill, thinking you've got wide open road, and now there's a truck turning out. It just seems inconducive. So I've even talked to you about no left turns, some of those options, but honestly, that's kind of where my thought was going, was if there were no semi-traffics here, that takes a lot of my concerns about traffic. There's still traffic, but you're gonna have traffic whether this is apartments or R3 or R1 or whatever, right? And so regular box truck traffic, regular commercial traffic, non-semi-trailer might be an option. This is the only reason I was bringing that up.
the majority of the tenants that we are targeting for a building like this are typically would fall under, housing materials supply, your roofers, your plumbers, home goods showroom, a countertop showroom, that HVAC, that type of business typically would accept a delivery from a WB67 18-wheeler, maybe once or twice a week, but the majority of the traffic would be typically, box trucks and customers and staff that work there. And I think the site plan kind of shows what the intent is. It's really not, I'm gonna flip to it real quick. With the shared truck court, that's not conducive to a high truck operation, right? You have different businesses in the different buildings. If there's just a ton of trucks going in there, businesses that need that level of service for that many tractor trailer trucks aren't going to lease this building. They're gonna go down to South Park or somewhere, by the airport where it's designed more for that. And so, however, those tenants do need those once or twice a week deliveries, and that's why they pick a building like this, is because it has the dock high doors, and they need that, and they need a modern version of it too, and that's what we're trying to provide: high quality, modern version for these businesses that are really serving this locality and region. This isn't a drop off from the East Coast going to the West Coast. It's not conducive for that. It's for products that are going to be used within the area. I wanted to get through this, and I definitely want to answer your questions too, but I think I might address some of them. Just really quick with KBC, we've been in the Nashville area operating for 20 years. We've done 8 million square feet of quality Class A business and industrial parks. over the last 5 years, especially. And again, many tenants are local and regional. We have brokers, engineers, and development experience with all industrial product types and sizes in our company. So I think we really take pride in understanding this market, and we're not just trying to plop any old building that we can, somewhere. This is a spec development, so there are no current tenants or leases. We're not designing this building for anyone in particular. This is building it for those tenants I requested that might have a lease coming up and are trying to upgrade and get a better space. And then I kind of touched on the other 2 points already. So Airport Innovation District is on the future land use plan and includes this site. We understand it's zoned residential now, but this is on the future land use plan, and the airport industrial land use plan includes uses like I-1, I-2, and I-3 industrial, professional and office buildings, and airport district. And, just to talk about the intensity of what we're proposing, I-1 light industrial is, a lighter intensity. I know it doesn't, depends on how you define that, but, we still think we're not proposing the heaviest thing that is contemplated for this innovation district. I wanted to point out as well the 840 Gateways, which is, along Nissan Drive all the way to the south and, is up against a lot of residential, also includes light industrial uses contemplated as well as residential and commercial. And, to your point, Steve, and I have a slide on it, those all have more traffic than what we're proposing from a volume standpoint. I understand there's not, as much trucks associated with those, but from just a pure volume standpoint, it's a higher ratio.
Just, can I speak just a second on that?
Sure.
Yes.
That's actually not correct. That's not an 840 Gateway character area on our land use plan. That's actually mixed use center is the policy area.
Okay.
Which is more commercial or residential in nature, no industrial at all. So,
That's my mistake, I'm sorry.
yeah, so I just wanted, so everyone here knows as well, that's not, I want to make sure they understand that that's not what we're not talking about industrial all the way down Nissan Drive, including the farm and everything that's still there, the Ben John's farm and all that. So that character area is at 840, not here. So just for clarification.
And that's my mistake. I'm sorry I got that wrong. I would not intentionally present that. I hope you all know that. So here's a concept rendering of our building. We had this, this was done by a professional architect. This is Class A designed. We take into account the surrounding area and, try to make these buildings, as attractive as is, makes economic sense. Visual interest with paint and texture variation to break up those walls so you're not looking at a big, blank wall. We have vertical and horizontal articulation. You can see kind of at the top of the panels there. And then we selected some earth tones to blend in with kind of the more natural surroundings of this particular site. Regarding the height, I believe these buildings are planned for 32-foot clear height. And so that's the internal, just a technical spec for the internal height of like racking within the building. So necessarily there's some steel and roofing, and then the panels along the edges are taller than that to screen, HVAC units and stuff. So
You know how tall that parapet wall is?
Usually they're about 4 or 5 feet. It kind of varies because the roof.
So we're talking about another,
the
maybe
roofs,
additional 5 foot,
the
count
roof-
the steel.
You gotta count the trusses.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking about.
So the 32-foot clear normally ends up around 45 feet, maybe 43.
Okay. That's where I was wanting to go.
Yeah. So we don't need 50, but it's not 30 either. So I just wanted to clarify that. So regarding the site plan, you know, as far as this site, you know, although it is adjacent to some residential, you know, 2/3 of the effective area which we're looking at developing actually abuts a undeveloped and undevelopable floodplain and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers green space. So, you know, from that standpoint, that it's isolated by that surrounding use, you know, there's not gonna be anything there moving forward. So from a transition standpoint, although we are up against some of the residential, mostly we're not and aren't going to be, you know, ever. As far as the building design, you know, we have the internal truck court, but we also added those bump outs is what we call them, but the building, you know, outlined in red there, screen the truck court and, you know, which effectively blocks view and noise. That's not required by the zoning code necessarily, but, you know, we understand the adjacency to our neighbors there and thought that that would be a good way to help kind of keep the activity in the truck court and not, you know, be spilling over into our neighbors. And then lastly, on the buffer, the required is 20 feet. What we're proposing is to maintain 20 feet against the property line of the existing foliage, which if you go out there is, you know, 50-foot tall trees along with understory, and then adding an additional 30 feet of type C buffer for a total buffer of 50 feet. Now, we chose type C for that extra 30 feet because type D requires a berm, and we thought going in there installing the berm would or could, you know, impact that existing natural buffer of existing trees that we want to keep healthy, right? That's the best way we're going to screen this, other than going in, you know, tearing it out and putting rows of evergreens. You know, those trees exist today, and we think would do a good job as a first step to buffering us from the residential. So you can kind of see here there's a few cross sections, A, B, C, and D, between the buildings and the adjacent houses. These are, you know, those cross sections in profile view. And you can kind of see, I mean, there's varying widths of that existing foliage between the houses and our property line. But the main point is, I don't think this has a laser pointer, but those two kind of vertical lines in the middle are the 20-foot that we're maintaining. And then to the left of that, where you have those pine-looking trees, is the extra 30 feet of type C buffer that we're proposing. So, you know, whether or not that's acceptable is your prerogative, but, you know, from our standpoint, we really did do our best to, you know, present a buffer that was going to, you know, save our neighbors exposure to this driveway. So from a traffic standpoint, you know, purely from volume, I-1 is the least intense commercial use of what can be in this district. There's a table down here, and those rates are generated by the Institution for Traffic Engineers, the ITE code. And so an equivalent square footage of other uses from what we're proposing, if you look on the right, is, you know, between 5.5 and 6 times the volume of traffic that this use would produce. Now, I understand, you know, an office building or shopping center would probably have less building square footage, but, you know, not 20% of what we're proposing. And so to kind of get that equivalent traffic, like I told you earlier about our target demographic, they're taking a few deliveries per week. It's not intended to be a major truck terminal, and we don't think any truck terminal clients would look at this site for longer than 2 seconds. And then again, the shared truck court, the single loading docks, the major truck terminals prefer to use cross docks because you have trucks coming in, trucks coming out. We didn't propose that here. And also the proximity to the highway. You know, the big industrial buildings with the high trucks want to be close to the highway. That's money to them. That's going through traffic to them. They are not interested in a building that, you know, is in this location generally. So, you know, all this to say, we have an intended user for this, and it's not a high truck user. There will be trucks, but I think when considered in the context of how much traffic could be here for these other uses, it's not as intense as it could be.
So you mentioned trucks a few times. In your traffic study, what was the amount of trucks versus normal traffic that was considered? Or was it just all average traffic?
So in the traffic study, they just got yesterday, our traffic engineer assigned about 30% of total traffic to trucks. Let's see here. So there's 218 trips. A trip is one way. So a car coming and going is 2 trips. And they assigned about a 30% total trips to trucks. So that's about
70.
Well, yeah, 70 trips. So
35 in, 35 out.
35 trucks per day. You know, majority of these are operating during the business day, so it's not typically coming and going at rush hour patterned like you would see multifamily use or the grocery store or something to that effect. So they're spread all of the day. I think it averages out to about 3 or 4 an hour. Our engineer can go more into detail there, but
I was reviewing that, and honestly, I was a little surprised to see that the West Brown approach on Nissan Drive and Driveway B, which is one of your, it would be at full build a D rating, and we were okay with that. I don't see how that doesn't warrant an adjustment. On top of that, you could modify those numbers by simply saying more cars are gonna go out the other way, and that reduces it. So, we're not gonna, as a town, I'm not gonna accept a D rating of new build anywhere. I mean, we're just setting ourselves up for failure, right? Not to mention, your own counts show that 29,000 people on Nissan Drive during the day. 29,000 traffic on that one road, and you're gonna have a D rating. That's just a recipe for disaster.
I understand, you know, being empty buildings, it's hard to know exactly what the traffic patterns are going to be. You know, we understand, unfortunately, we can't really, you know, control the surrounding roadways, but I totally understand, you know, some sort of stop sign or some sort of traffic, you know, device there just to make sure that people are being safe. You know, we're big fans of maintaining that.
What is the projected user for the parking and outdoor storage?
So that is our phase 2, and just like that, that is a speculative, you know, that there's kind of a piece of land there that's on the other side of high voltage power lines. So it's pretty limited on what could even go there feasibly, and we thought this was there are users out there that need that. It's kind of tucked back in there.
Could you give me an example of a typical user for that?
Well, like a plumbing company or like outdoor utilities company's got 20-inch lengths of PVC that, you know, doesn't really fit into the oversaid door very well with a forklift, so they might have a lay-down yard for something like that. Or, you know, roofing materials. We've had tenants that have like an outdoor store, you know, where they load them onto flatbed trucks for roofing contractors. That's just some examples.
Any trailer type storage at all?
I mean, possibly, but it's pretty small. You're not going to be able to get many trailers in there. So,
Not an RV storage, is that what you're going for?
Well,
Boat and RV
that
storage.
or, you know, maybe some empty trailers that have made deliveries and, you seen them. I know not a lot based on it.
My
but-
first thought was those empty dumpsters we've been dealing with recently too. Would they be allowed here as a?
That's,
what I
that's an
thought.
issue we had over on Murfreesboro Road too.
Yep.
With, it got abused, honestly. You know, it's been 5 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago, I think I met with some of your people because they wanted some input. And so one of the things I asked at that meeting, I don't see here, but it looks to me like both your ingress egress points of interest are Jefferson Pike and Nissan Boulevard, correct?
Yes, sir.
I think I specifically asked about the one on Nissan at that time. I'm trying to recall the whole gist of the conversation, but I had some real concern about a left turn for any kind of truck coming out of the one on Nissan. For anybody that lives over there knows that's a pretty steep hill, and it's blind when you top the hill. It looks like either nobody listened or this is something you're going to propose anyway to cross over those extra lanes to get somebody to go towards Nissan. And I
Those are the same issues that I raised when I met with them about not just Nissan, but Jefferson Drive as well, Jefferson Pike as well. It's even closer to the intersection. It's downhill, people accelerating, and now you have a semi making left turns
Yeah.
across multiple lanes of traffic.
And it's kind of the same concept if you're coming out of the one on Jefferson Pike. You're crossing lanes there to get either in a turn lane or to get in the far right lane. So those were my concerns. Truck traffic and traffic in general, ingress egress, was some of the big ones I had. As I've learned more about it, I guess I'm a little concerned about the proximity to Pembroke and some of those neighbors there that have spoke tonight. Now, one thing I do want to put to rest, I had a couple of emails about this, and I don't know if they were Pembroke neighbors or not, but just know, no matter what happened here, we're not going to open up Pembroke Lane to truck traffic. So there was some people that had that concern and voiced that concern to me in their email. I don't think anybody on this body would ever open up truck traffic into the neighborhood, but.
That's not our intent either. We do not
Right.
desire
So
that.
I want to put that, whatever it was, a rumor, whatever, that part needs to be put to rest. But I'm like Steve. I've known a lot of people in this room for a long time. And no matter what we do here tonight, I want them to know we're going to take our citizens at their best process. We want to make sure we process this. Every email I've answered has been this. We'll listen to the presentations, and then we'll delineate what we want to do after that. I appreciate the neighbors coming out here, and I appreciate them being polite and respectful as they've spoken. I know the Olerud family, gosh.
Don't say it.
Okay, I'm not going to say it. Gilbert's in the room. He and I graduated.
It'll tell us how old you are.
Well, so Gilbert will tell you, he's almost 70, they said, so. My point is this, no matter what we do here tonight, I want everybody to try to be as pleased as we can make them, right? And so they are our constituents, and they're the ones being affected by this the most. The zoning, for me, it's not there. So the zoning that's currently there, that's why you're asking for a rezone. And that part is a little bit challenging for me. R1 was the default zoning of land when we started zoning property. Everything was zoned R1 until it started growing. And so those are the challenges, but I did mention those challenges in that meeting. I shared it with, I think, Jenny, when I talked to Jenny. And that's a big concern for me is the traffic and the noise. That's my concerns. I think even if it stays R1, and let's say It won't. houses or whatever was in there, now you're not doing semi-trucks, you're doing double that amount of automobiles.
Well,
So there's gonna be
yeah.
some traffic.
Well, I mean, right now Pembroke is stubbed into that. And so I think that would probably be one of the natural ways out versus not necessarily.
If it was to go to residential.
Yes.
There would definitely be options, although I know most of the neighbors in this room wouldn't want Pembroke open either. But if it was residential traffic and a red light installed at Bent Tree, there could be some things done to make that tolerable. I mean, my comments are really for Jenny and Candy and Gilbert. I want you to be able to develop this land, do what you want to with it. I just don't know that this is the right solution. I would definitely support, you heard my questions about restricting truck traffic altogether. It sounds like that's not really an option or even a discussion point, which not that that would be the difference, but that would help. So I would be more than supportive for anything that's just even a little less impactful. Commercial, honestly, C2 up against residential, we have trouble with sometimes. So definitely industrial is a challenge.
I want to address Mr. Montgomery. Where's he at?
He's in the back.
He specifically pointed out some drainage concerns. I want Kevin to address how that is looked at from a standpoint of making sure that it doesn't dump water on a neighbor. I want our planner to speak to that for you.
Yeah, I can give the kind of the high, 50,000 foot view of that. I'm not the stormwater engineer on staff for sure, but yeah, our requirements, we're part of the MS4 program administered by TDEC. So there's a whole lot of stormwater quality as well as quantity that we have to look at. But we require that you detain the 25-year storm event on the site. So as far as the pre-develop, you look at where the water's going now, and then and how rapidly or not that it leaves the site. And then after you develop, you put the rooftops, pavement, all that goes in. You have to then look at the post-development runoff, and it has to be designed so that it doesn't leave the site any faster than what it's doing today. At the 25-year storm event, we require you to route the 100-year storm event. So if there's drainage issues now, this wouldn't necessarily fix the drainage issues, but it would have to be designed so it wouldn't make them worse. So,
In other words, you cannot displace any more water from that property that's developed
than what it's doing now, than what it's doing today.
Adjacent properties.
Correct. As to what it's doing today, again, at that 25-year storm event level.
Well, and I think that's what's changed over years, and Tom can probably, speak to this, or at least nod, that as development has progressed and, as we've looked at it from different municipalities, from a state perspective and whatnot, when it's drainage, we recognize the issues from the past. And now there are corrective measures in place so that you don't see this disbursement or addition or adding or flooding something that's on an adjacent property. It's not allowable, and if you can't develop a site plan that accommodates that, it's not going to get approved.
Yeah, and certainly those rules were not in place when Bent Tree was built. So that may be why there's some concerns and some issues.
Growing up there, I know personally that the property, there's a rather large drainage ditch that runs along Pembroke Lane, directly behind most of the houses. My parents' house flooded multiple times because of the way that drainage ditch was constructed back in the day. It runs into all of that area right there beside Jefferson Pike, which eventually makes its way to the river. So the water is flowing towards Jefferson Pike, and pretty much right at the corner of their development is where that ditch comes into that property. So I think the biggest concern would be the area they are in holds water. So where's that water has got to go? But the main drainage ditch that runs behind Pembroke probably could be redirected to the right and into that property and avoid it. But I definitely know specifically the water issues. Pembroke happens to be the bottom spot. The next road over is called High Point because it's the high point. And so the water from there runs to Pembroke Lane and runs right out there. So that's how it works.
We have our civil engineer that,
May I speak to the stormwater?
If you can briefly give us your name and address, please. Yes, I'll allow it.
Travis Todd with Thomas and Hutton, 252 Robert Rose Drive, Murfreesboro.
You know our friend Jerome.
I do know your friend, Jerome. My friend too. part of the issue here with the stormwater, with the existing flooding concerns, which we have definitely seen, is that there's a good portion of the subject property that we're talking about, that stormwater flows toward the neighborhood. And that ditch that you mentioned floods there was not sized to handle what goes to it. The good news is we're gonna be taking most of that flows toward the neighborhood away. So that ditch will not see nearly what it sees today. So we're not just doing the bare minimum to meet the code. We'll actually be directing that on toward the core property, and it will never get to the neighborhood. So the drive you see coming all the way down our southern property line, everything from that point into the development will not flow toward the neighborhood anymore. Many of our projects, when we have site conditions near us, residences near us, the projects improve the drainage, they don't make it worse. And this is one of those cases. We'll be directing, I did a back and napkin calculation out there, which we'll get into at the site plan stage. But we think, upwards of 75% of that stormwater is not going to flow toward the neighborhood anymore. And we have a plan for that. So there will be improvements to what neighbors see coming to that area.
Do you want to speak to the access too? I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
Sure, and just a few comments about traffic and truck traffic. Again, land use and traffic are tied together very closely. I think we've tried to demonstrate that this use is very low in terms of traffic, in terms of what could be developed here. We don't know what the plans are kind of for the corner or anything else in this area in the future. The study does show, we're talking about 3 trucks during the peak hour, 3 in the morning and 3 in the evening during kind of that 7 to 9 and 4 to 6 hour. That's all that was projected to come in and out of here. And those trucks they're big, they don't shoot gaps, right? So the level of service and the delay you see is the truck has to wait longer to get out. It's because they want to be safe too. And that's, significantly better than a car going, I think I got a gap, I'm going to shoot out, which is where you see that high speed is what contributes to a lot of those accidents and fatalities. And so out of the things that are proposed in the Airport Innovation District, this is really about the lowest use in terms of traffic, especially as it relates to trucks. And so we obviously will be designing those accesses to meet all the site distance triangles, both vertically and horizontally. We're aware of the vertical curve on Nissan Drive and have a plan to address that.
Okay. Anything else for these gentlemen? Thank you.
Thank you.
I was thinking about just a couple of months ago, we had a big project that came to us out at the 840 area, Hillwood. And boy, we mashed over that one for a long time, a year and a half, I think, before we ever really got anything to look at from a study perspective. And I mentioned Jerome. Jerome was kind of the driving force behind making sure we didn't kind of feel that was necessary at the time. So with his engineering background, he shared a lot of wisdom to us. And he's not here, obviously, but I appreciate you guys' comments. And anyway, we didn't do that one for a reason. And I guess the part that aches me the most goes back to the traffic. And if we wouldn't do it out at 840, what makes sense to do it right here on the corner of town? That's a little bit of the question I have about it.
Any other comments, questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we deny this request, but I want to make sure I'm clear. My concerns are specifically with the truck traffic. Traffic obviously is going to be an issue. I understand you guys are the lowest traffic option, but you're also the biggest vehicle traffic option. And then the industrial next to the residential, I'm just not sure is a fit. I would like to see either soft commercial or stay with a residential view because of the abutment to Pembroke Lane. Initially, I liked this. I thought it was closer to Jefferson Pike, and I didn't see that it was as far down behind Pembroke as it is. I thought it was more like behind the existing buildings, and I didn't realize it was further down as it is after I've looked at it. But I make a motion to deny.
So, and to be clear on your denial, it's based on traffic concerns as well as inconsistent zoning?
Inconsistent zoning, right.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion?
Just one caveat. They have a right to develop this land. And it was mentioned tonight that something eventually is going to come in there. We may see you again. And just remember how we deliberated this tonight. We will deliberate the next thing again and again. And it may not always fit your liking, but we're going to do our very level best to make sure everything blends and matches and pleases everyone. I want the Oliver's to be able to sell that property as quickly as soon as they want to. I can tell you, this wasn't their motivation. This was your motivations. You came to them, asked them to sell. They weren't looking to bring an industrial warehouse into your neighborhood. I just want to make that real clear, okay? It wasn't their proposal, it was this proposal. I've had that conversation with them. I don't think you all mind me telling them that. And because I know them, I know their hearts, and they want to be good neighbors. They have been good neighbors to this community as long as I've been here, well over 50 years. Gone to church with them, I know their family. My first job was at Gill's IGA. So you talking about bringing jobs into the community, I appreciate it, but they did too. And so they have a right to be able to do what they want to do. Candy ran the gas station, Gilbert ran everything. Everywhere you look up, and Gilbert's everywhere. But a lot of you in this room shopped and traded with them. So I hope you know that their hearts is in the right place. They want to be good neighbors regardless of what they do. The next thing could be something you don't like as well. We'll listen to it. We have to listen to it. But I want them to be able to have success selling that property, and I know they want to be good neighbors with you all. So that's all I have.
Let me add this. My concern, of course, was also traffic, and I didn't feel like the zoning was consistent with existing zoning. And I felt like if we were here and we were looking back out on Safari and out that way, it's a wonderful project. I think it's a wonderful project. I guess some of the things that disappointed me the most, and I'm not saying folks in this room, but Shelby talked about some of the attacks on social media. Let me tell you, I go back as far as he does with the Olerud family. And I can remember growing up and my parents going to their store and being a little short on the bill. And Mr. Olerud writing it down. And then my dad coming back and paying it. That's what Smyrna is. And this is a fine family. So for folks that maybe jump on Facebook and they reach all these preconceived notions, it's really easy to be that keyboard cowboy, but you don't know who you're talking about. And I would just ask everybody to be civil and to understand that, you know, we're a board that we hear things out, we look at things, you know, I talked about it earlier as far as land use, regulation, ordinances, consistency, and all those things there. Everybody, well, let's just say this, 2, 3, 4, and then number 5 who's vacant. We're not elected, we serve, and we're happy to do it for our community. These guys are double service right here, and
Double whammied.
double whammied. I was in that, and I got smart.
So was Jenny.
And Jenny also too.
So was Jenny.
So I just want to be clear about my thoughts on the family and my thoughts on what I've looked at.
And Linda. I didn't want to forget Linda. She sits over all quiet like, but she did this too.
Okay. All right, so I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of denying this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? This motion is denied.
I just want, just for clarification, this is a recommendation to council still
Right.
for denial, so
Yep,
this
it's
will be
still
on.
gotta go to council.
Unless it is withdrawn, it will be on the council meeting with a negative
it's a zoning
recommendation on
change.
Tuesday
Yeah.
night.
Yeah.
Just so, the folks in the room who I know don't do this every day like I do, may not know that, so I want to make
Let's,
sure they know
let's
that.
do this. If you're here and you're really enjoying this, we want you to stay. But if you would like to leave, I'm going to give everybody just a few minutes so that we can get to the next item. Well, good. You can get over it. Sorry.
Hey, Gilbert, you better go. Yes, sir. We're in the middle of our meeting. We're in the middle of it. See you back there. Can you get these all online? Yeah, they're online. See that young, hey, go talk to that young lady right there on the end.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
That was not cool. By you.
Cool, yeah, nobody heard it.
All right, thank you.
Except his team, but the rest of them seem
You got that. Okay, let's come back in order here. Okay, excuse me. All right, our next item under rezoning is Armia Saber and Mariana Messiah Saber, 11264 Old Nashville Highway, rezoning R2 to C2.
Yeah, this is a rezoning request at 11264 Old Nashville Highway. This is, request is to be rezoned from R2 to C2. It's about 0.54 acres, a little over half an acre, currently zoned R2. Surrounding zoning is R2 and C2. The land use plan would support medium-density, single-family residential in this area. The major thoroughfare plan does designate Old Nashville Highway as a minor arterial, and adequate right-of-way does exist for that street. There is an existing house and a detached accessory structure on this property. There is an existing 8-inch sewer line which runs west to east through the middle of the property. So this sewer line location and easement would have to be accommodated with regards to any buildings, or it would have to be relocated, one of the two. The rear, about 1/3 of this property is within the 100-year floodplain, with a small area of 500-year floodplain adjacent to it, to that 100-year floodplain. So any development would require submittal of a floodplain development permit application. This property is a part of a residential neighborhood. Does front Old Nashville Highway, and it is across the street from commercial zoning with a commercially developed, that's the gymnastics building that's directly across the street there. There's no proposed use or anything like that. They just requested C2 zoning. They just bought this property very recently and have requested the commercial zoning. I think that's all I got at this time.
Kevin, the two adjacent properties, they are residential. Are those R2 as well?
Yes, that's the entire east side of Old Nashville Highway. That entire development there is zoned R2.
And the closest commercial, would that be at the corner of, on that side of the street?
On that side of the street, it's at Hazelwood.
Hazelwood?
At Hazelwood and Old Nashville, yes, sir.
Okay.
On that side of the street.
Did we not look at something maybe close to this on Old Nashville Highway at Noel that was it Noel?
There was one at Noel more
Yeah.
recently.
That was-
And there was one closer in this same general area as well.
Noel was declined, right?
They were both turned down.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Other questions or comments?
Well, if you look at Google Earth, it looks like both buildings are being used commercially now.
Let's,
Both 11264 and 248.
well, they're not zoned for it.
Well, they're just storing, you could see cars and trailers and
Yeah,
such. That may not be commercial, but that could be a
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a codes issue for sure.
Yeah. Christie's in the room, maybe we need to have her go take a look at it.
Other questions or comments? Are we ready for a motion?
I make the motion to deny based on unsuitable zoning.
Have a motion to deny based on unsuitable zoning. Do I have-
Inconsistent.
Inconsistent zoning.
Second?
Second from Ken. Further discussion. All those in favor of this denial, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion is denied. Next, we have a final plat, Rock Springs Senior Living Subdivision, Medical Park and Addison Drive. Owner, developer, Health and Educational Facilities of Rutherford County, Tennessee Land, Sowicar LLC.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
This is the final plat for the Rock Springs Senior Living subdivision. This is the PR, part of this is PRD, it's one track, and then the other 7 are R3. So Medical Park and Addison Drive, the two connection points to existing streets there. 8 lots, 13.62 acres. No streets on the major thoroughfare plan are affected with this development. Signs or standard comment here, signs do require a separate permit, must be within setbacks. Stormwater control measure long-term maintenance agreement. It must be completed, recorded, and referenced on the final plat. We asked them to add, excuse me, add the signatures of the owners and land surveyor prior to submittal for recording. There is an 8-inch water line shown going across Rock Springs Road. That doesn't exist yet. They now show, actually, it's not shown going across Rock Springs anymore. They're tying into the water line on this same side of Rock Springs Road. So that comment may be able to be removed. I want to make sure the Utilities Department has a chance to look at that. Comment number 6 regarding hydrants, that has been addressed and can be removed. The stream buffer along Rock Springs Branch at 60 feet, that is correct now, so we can remove that comment. General Note 1, to revise that to show the correct number of lots and buildable lots, that can be removed. It's been taken care of. And to show the minimum building setback line at least 5 feet off the drainage easement on Lot 1, that's been taken care of. So comments 6 through 9 can all be removed. We do have one little minor comment that we do need to add. There is a water line easement on the east side of Medical Park. They show the easement, they do not show the width of that easement, so they just need to label that width. So we would add that comment. So with that added comment and then comments 1 through 5, we would recommend approval.
And this is consistent in what we saw previously, including preliminary?
The preliminary plat as well as the overall, when the PRD came in for the senior living as well. This is very consistent with what was shown.
And as I recall, the lot sizes were consistent with the property immediately behind.
That's correct. The existing development next door was R3 as well.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or discussion?
Chairman, I'm staying out of I'm going to abstain on this vote.
Okay, we have one abstention and not participating in discussion.
This is the site plan, so.
It's the final plat.
This is the final plat, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything? Okay. Not
I'll make a motion to approve
with staff comments?
with staff comments.
Second that?
A motion and a second to approve with staff comments, including the water line easement being shown and labeled.
Right.
Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This final plat and motion are approved. We're now on to mandatory referral, Cedar Stone sewer and temporary construction easements.
This is a mandatory referral. This is the town's preparing to obtain a sanitary sewer and temporary construction easement. This is for a sewer line project that's needed to serve the Bradley Downs project. The off-site, the existing 10-inch line is being upsized to a 15-inch gravity line routed around the existing bridge on Morton Lane. The easement would be obtained from the Rutherford County Board of Education, which did approve granting the easement in January of this year. Did show the exhibit as there's on the screen as well for this location of those easements. The Planning Commission is required to review the obtaining of these easements and find whether or not it's in keeping with the approved comprehensive plan of the town and make a recommendation to council. Staff would recommend approval.
Okay, questions? I'm sorry?
Yes. We got a kick out of that one too. That's the across the street property owner from this side, yeah.
Almost sounds like a scammer to me.
I'd take a double take on that.
I think Ken's interested in that. Back to the referral and the easement. Any questions specifically about that or discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Mark. And a second. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, and this is approved. And this recommendation will be sent on to council. Okay, we are now on to ordinance amendments. The first is sign ordinance, temporary signage, banners, flags, and inflatables.
Yeah, this is a discussion of, or an ordinance amendment that was discussed at the last joint meeting between Planning Commission and Town Council. This is specifically addressing temporary signage. But essentially, in summary, regarding banners, it would remove the current 90 days per calendar year limit permitted in 30-day increments. Essentially would allow for new businesses. So banners may be displayed for up to 7 days within 3 months of obtaining a business license. And then in a transition period, if a business may display a banner while awaiting the fabrication and installation of a permanent sign, provided that permanent sign has a permit issued by the town. So while they're waiting to get that sign fabricated and installed, they could have a banner. Streamers and pennants would no longer be allowed, and inflatable signs would no longer be allowed either. So the actual ordinance amendments, it's primarily sections of Chapter 3 as well as Chapter 7 of the sign ordinance that would be amended to, but in summary, what I just said is really what would be the effect of the amendments as they are proposed. And I think that's all that I have.
Okay, I know that we discussed this in a joint meeting. Does anybody have any additional comments or
Does this
input?
address festoons?
That would be an inflatable, would it not?
Well, some of them. Some of them are waving, you know.
Yeah, they would not be allowed, so
Okay.
I don't think they're allowed currently, but.
We see them.
Anything else? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of this motion concerning the sign ordinance changes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion is approved. We're now on to zoning ordinance. The first is accessory apartments as a special exception in the R4 zoning district.
Yeah, this is another one that we discussed at the last joint meeting, and this would just essentially, currently R1, R2, and R3 currently allow accessory apartments as a special exception review by the Board of Zoning Appeals. This would just add R4 to that as well, but only in the situation where there is a single-family home in an R4 zone. R4 also allows for duplexes or zero lot line dwellings. In those cases, you could not have a third residence. It would only be for those situations where it is an existing single-family home where someone wanted to have an accessory apartment. Again, would be a Board of Zoning Appeals review, same as R1, 2, and 3. And so that's essentially it only affects that one section of the ordinance, 5.051.4C, just adding this as an allowed use. As as by special exception by BZA review, in a situation where you have a single-family residence. And that's all that I got.
Again, something we've discussed previously. Any other thoughts or comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion is approved. We're now on to bail bond agency under zoning ordinance.
Yeah, this is one we haven't discussed. This is one that had kind of came up and kind of like the roll-off dumpster use. This one kind of popped up. We had someone actually contact us about potentially opening a bail bonding agency here in the town. This is not something that is addressed at all currently by the zoning ordinance, and so we looked at this, and so we wanted to correct that. And so essentially, it kind of falls under general business services. If you look under our various use listings, currently that would be make this use allowed by right in C1, C2, C4, C5, PNO2, and A1, and by special exception in I1 and 2. We didn't think that was appropriate in all those districts, so we would recommend this be restricted from operating in C1, C2, C4, and PNO2, but remain by right in C5 and A1, and as a special exception review in I1 and 2. And so it changes Article 2 by creating a definition of this use, as well as then amending the various districts or sections of various districts where it would be allowed and not be allowed. So again, this is one we haven't discussed before, so you may have questions on this one, or maybe you didn't on the others. But again, we're just trying to address this so that it's in appropriate locations.
Basically goes in what we talked about, putting vape stores and cannabis stores be in the same category.
Yeah, well, this would be a separate, that's the next one. This is just for the bail bond agency is a separate one, yeah.
I think the vape stores are going to be C5?
Proposed.
C4, C5?
Proposed, yeah.
Yeah, it's proposed C5 or I believe industrial as well.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to get is the bail bonds going to be the same? Is that the intent?
Very, very similar, yes.
Okay.
Well, I think the whole intent is to put them in an appropriate place for business to be transacted, while also being cognizant of residential areas and maybe some of the higher retail areas and things along those lines.
I agree. Agreed.
Okay.
Such a good move.
Any other questions or comments on this? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve with staff comments.
I have a motion to approve with staff comments. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion. All those in favor of this motion for the zoning ordinance, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? This motion is approved. Last under zoning ordinance, tobacco vape and cannabinoid retail establishments.
Yeah, this is one we discussed at the last joint meeting. This would create a definition within the zoning ordinance regarding establishments conducting retail sales of tobacco, vape, or cannabinoid-derived products as the primary business operation. The various amendments would lead to the use being allowed by right within the C5, I1, I2, and I3 zoning districts, with some supplementary provisions applying to the locations within those districts. So the first, Article 2 is just to create a definition of what this type of, where these type of establishments, defining what they are. And so it would be basically where 25% or more of the net floor or shelf area is dedicated to, or 51% or more of gross sales are derived from those type of retail products. And so, again, would create a separate activity type for it. And then, again, allowing it in C5, I1 and 2. If it's allowed in I1 or 2, it's automatically allowed in I3. And so you wouldn't have to change I3, it's automatically be allowed. And then the supplementary provisions, within those districts, one, they shall not be allowed to be located within the H1 Historic Overlay District, shall not be permitted as a home-based business, shall have a minimum of 1,000 feet separation from another similar establishment, public or private school, town park, daycare center, or church, measured from the closest property line to the closest property line. And they shall have a minimum 250 feet separation from property zoned or used for residential purposes, measured again from property line to property line. Those are very similar to what Murfreesboro has in their regulations, so we were trying to copy those just to kind of be consistent with what our neighbors have. So, and that's what we've got on that.
So when you're talking about a CBD, Delta 8, Delta 9, or hemp-derived cannabinoids, is this in any form?
Yes.
Okay. And then as far as any retail establishments that are already doing this, are they
Anybody
grandfathered at
that
this
is
point?
established at the time, they would be grandfathered, yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Or questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve with staff comments.
I have a motion to approve with staff comments. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion is approved. We're now on to the March bond review reports.
Yes. Let me do that. Got several this month, not as many as sometimes, but we do have several, so I'll hit those. First one is Gwynn Farms 2A. This one's about 90% built out. I did talk with the contractor or the developer there. They said they're going to review that with their contractor and to ensure that all items have been completed. Primarily, it's the final topping and then just some cleanup on the stormwater issues. That's what's left. We did recommend a 6-month extension on that one just because they do still have a few lots to build there as well. Bankside, Section 5, Phase 2. This is a project that has been, or bond has been in place for many years. This is really for to provide a bond to get a second kind of access, emergency access road into that development because there's only one way in and out. Talked to the developer there, did ask for an extension. They're planning to submit construction plans for Section 7, which would include a road connecting to Kedron Church Road. And so they're looking at this year, starting that construction. I'm okay with extending that bond for a year. Courtyards at Stewart's Creek Phase 2, did hear from the developer there today on that one. Again, they're only about 19% built out there. We've only had that one a year, so it would extend a 1 year there. They are hoping to, they said they're hoping to pave, in the next few months. Obviously, they still got several homes to build before they would at least in Phase 2, need to pave. Gwynn Farms, Phase 3, Section 2. Again, this one's, they are about 100% built out. Again, so we would not recommend a very long extension. 6 months at the most extension on that one because they are 100% built out. They need to go and get that section paved. Hemsley Place is complete. This is the end of their maintenance period. They had 3 or 4 items there just to clean up items. Talked to the developer. He said we're basically just waiting on a good dry weather window to get everything fixed with the pond and get everything done there. So if they're able to get that done by April 9th, we could release that. Otherwise, we may have to extend it 3 months, but hopefully they can get that done by April 9th. It gives them a month to get done. Hopefully we'll have some dry weather between now and then. Derby Run, Phase 1A and B. Did hear from the developer since the packet went out. They're hoping to be completed by May 1st. Obviously, it's April 13th is their expiration date. This is an escrow, so we would recommend a 3-month extension to hopefully get that done. And if they get done before that July 13th date, we may go ahead and release them if they get done. Hunters Point, Section 3, Phase 2, Mr. Gibbs, who was a developer on this project, unfortunately passed away in the last month or so. His wife, who they were a team on that project. She's trying to get, she was very involved. She's working with our inspectors to finish up these remaining items. So I would recommend a 6-month extension on that, so as she's trying to work through that. And then Marlowe, this is the end of the maintenance period on that project. They have 3 remaining items there on the punch list. I have talked with them. They are working on getting those 3 remaining items knocked out. I know they've been working with our inspectors as well. So if they get that finished up by April 17th, we could release that, otherwise extend it 3 months. And that's all we got.
Okay, any questions or comments concerning our March bond review reports?
Move to approve the bond review report.
Motion to approve the bond review report.
Second.
And a second. Further discussion?
Gleefully.
All those in favor of approving the March bond review report, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The bond review report is approved. Staff comments and other business.
I don't have anything else tonight.
Nothing, sir.
Okay, anything from the commission?
Yeah, just a thought, the action we took on the bail bond agencies and the tobacco and vape, have we ever done kind of a proactive, all the very unusual uses that might pop up that we should get ahead of rather than be reactive to?
Do you have a list of those unusual
I-
items that might pop up?
It's got, somebody probably has done it, right?
Yeah,
I'm
it's,
starting to get worried, Charles.
Just a thought.
Yeah, I
No, that's
agree
a good
with you,
point.
and I mean, that's
I
why,
agree,
that's
yeah.
why we do a lot of the things that we do the way we do them, is because we didn't think of them or they popped up. I think if there
mean-
was a list, we would certainly be interested in doing that. I'm just not sure how you identify. It's amazing what people can come up with, let's just say that.
and the technology changes so fast sometimes on things that they get, the technology's faster than what regulations can come sometimes. That's obviously such as a vape. I mean,
I'm
that's
gonna
something-
ask ChatGPT before our
Give
next
me a
meeting.
list.
There you go.
I can tell you up until maybe, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, I don't know that we had ever discussed a roll-off dumpster business. And since then, we've had 3 or 4 things come along related to it.
Right.
So it's kind of like, once they show up, they come in triplets or whatever.
Yeah.
Anything else? We stand adjourned.